is to create some connectivity. So to let us know where other neurofeedback providers are. One of the things that's hard about learning neurofeedback is just, kind of feeling alone, and who do I talk to, and what if I get stuck, and all that kind of stuff. So, I have an idea about a client, but I want to talk with somebody. So we really want you guys to be able to have access to each other. Kristen is in the meeting as well. She is the one who sends out emails and does a lot of the coordination. And she's made a log. So maybe you want to go over that now real quick, Kristen, and then when it's being recorded, so people that come late, we won't do it again.
Sure, absolutely. So this is just a Google Doc that I'll share with everybody. I have Angelica and Mitch on there so you can see, what the good stuff about them, but we're just asking for some basic contact, email, phone number. Your website is helpful, where your location is, just so people know, where you all are, any specialties and equipment used. There's also a notes column in case you want to put anything else there. So I'm going to be sharing that with everybody during this meeting.
Okay, and Kristen will be sending out announcements before the meetings. They're worth reading, okay, because sometimes they're going to have, we might say, oh, we're going to send out this, whatever, a summary article to you or something, an additional article that will be contained in the emails that she sends. So I encourage you not to just trash her emails and be like, I don't need to read it. Okay, just glance over it, and it'll also have the links to the meetings and the schedule and so forth. So we appreciate everything she does. She does a lot behind the scenes.
I'll put my email in the chat as well in case anybody has any questions, as well as Linda's email for any Thinkific platform technical issues.
Great.
All right.
The other thing that Kristen does is when you're ready to set up a mentoring meeting, one of the things that we do that's unique with the course is you get a complimentary mentoring session that counts towards BCIA. People are often asking, when should I start that? When should I do it? It's really up to you. Different people, go through the course at a different pace. So if you want to do it early on, if you want to save it till later, whatever is good. But Kristen's the one that's going to set that up for you. And then if you do future mentoring, she will also set that up. So she's a good person to know and to be on her good side, because she'll help you a lot.
My pleasure.
Okay, so let's start out with, okay, and she put that in the, okay, she already put stuff in the chat. So let's start out, this is a big undertaking, and let's just, do a little bit of self-introductions. And I was so nosy, I already asked where people are, but also talk about, what you're doing. Why did you bring neurofeedback? Why are you studying this, and what do you want to get out of it? So I'll go the way you are on my screen. So Kirsten is first.
Hey guys. So yeah, I'm Kirsten. I am currently a PhD student at the University of Maryland studying cognitive motor neuroscience under the kinesiology department. So I look at human performance with a neuroscience spin. I often say to non-neuroscience people that I study sport neuroscience. So I look at the brain and sport. And I have a background in sports psychology. So my research tends to focus on cortical dynamics of applied sports psychology. So I look at what the brain looks like during mental imagery, during positive self-talk, things like that, and their effectiveness for human performance. And then at the other end of it, we look at things like stress and competition and the effects in the brain during performance. And my interest in neurofeedback kind of comes with all of that. I'm interested in it mostly to improve performance in an athletic context. And yeah, that's why I'm here right now. I know I've been going through the course, and I know, Angelica, you said like you Google a lot, EEG correlates of blank, whatever it may be. So I've been finding myself doing that a lot and trying to find gaps in the research, because I think I'll eventually use this to do research. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, one of the things when we started the course, we paired up, well, we reached out to all the equipment vendors. I don't know, maybe there's 6 or 7 of them, and asked them if they, wanted to offer any information about their equipment. And one of the things that you'll learn as you go into neurofeedback is it's somewhat of a divided field, and people like to hold on to their territory. So I was really surprised where most of the vendors were like, oh no, we're not giving you that information. I was like, don't be silly, guys. Like, I don't sell equipment. Like, all you're going to do is show your equipment to people who wouldn't otherwise see it. But at any rate, we did get 2 good positive responses, one from Eager. And so there are segments, videos of the Eager equipment. And then we also got video segments from Be Medic, and they took it a step further and said, we will also offer your students equipment that they can use while they're taking the course. Not a bad business decision, right? So you guys will all be getting the Be Medic equipment. Kristen is sending your name into Be Medic. They will contact you and facilitate if you want the equipment to get it. Okay, it's up to you. There's no additional cost. It's so that you can test it out. Why am I talking about that now? Because Be Medic is very interested in research. So if you're going to be doing research, we can help. Part of what we feel like our job is to bring you into the field of neurofeedback. We know a lot of people. We have a lot of nice relationships. So Be Medic is very interested in research and working with people that want to do that. So that's something you might reach us as you go along. What I'm also loving with this course is just, I feel like we get people that know more than us in the course at this point. So just hearing what you're doing, it sounds so exciting. And I do want to say, when you might be a person that gets into looking at EEG and ERPs and how the brain is processing and things like that. And with high performance athletes, we don't want to be working towards the norm, right?
Okay.
High performance athletes, nobody really wants to be average. Okay.
Right.
We don't want to work towards the database. We want to work towards what's going to work well for us. So that's going to be a particular challenge for you. There's not a lot of data in that area.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Because within our research, we use EEG as our neuroimaging device of choice, I should say. So I am familiar with that. But I would love to talk to you more just about, right now we were approached by a company called NeuroCatch that has a 6-minute test. They have a website and everything. I can send you a white paper too if you're interested, but
sure.
It's an interesting test for concussion. It's almost like a biomarker for concussion is what they're calling it. And it's interesting to look through, but I would love to get your opinion on it at some point. Both of you.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of work with concussion screening, and so there are those things out there. We tend to use the CBS system, cognitive brain science.
Brain science, okay.
There was one that was called Harry Karasides developed Excellent Brain, but Harry recently passed away very suddenly.
Yeah.
So that I don't anticipate that's going to get the continued development.
Okay.
Yeah. So good.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Okay. Ala, is that how I say it? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So just briefly, I work as an occupational therapist in the adult psychiatric unit. I work with all different type of populations with psychiatric issues ranging from schizophrenia, it's bipolar, substance abuse. This hospital is actually the only hospital in New Jersey that has developmental disabilities with psychiatric issues, separate unit. So I work there. I just came from there. And it's just interesting because I get to learn a lot. At the same time, being in the medical model, feeling like we're a decade behind and just trying to keep up with the trauma-informed care. And that's okay. Yeah, go ahead. And just kind of pushing myself along and finding new research and interventions. Not sure if it would bring it here, but recently my daughter, we're going through the process where she is going through screening and diagnosed with ADHD. So for me as a mother and also as a clinician with this background in trauma and psychiatric issues, I think that neurofeedback has a lot to offer, and I'm very enthusiastic and looking forward to joining you. So thank you so much for having me and providing this course.
Yeah.
I am thrilled that you're an OT. In Germany, it's the OT field that has the most neurofeedback providers, and I really think it's ideal for your field. And I've been very puzzled why it's not caught on more in the US with OT. So I'm hopeful you'll get into it, and maybe you can bring it to where you work, and maybe it can then begin to make its way in the OT field. So I'm very, very happy that you're here.
Oh, thank you. Yes, for sure. I agree with you. I'm also puzzled. When I was going through my program, we just kind of brushed over neurofeedback. There wasn't much. And we focus mainly on daily functional performance and how it hinders and gets in the way of doing basic tasks, living day to day. And a lot of it stems from ability to focus, attention, and things like that. So
Yes.
yeah, hopefully it'll catch fire. But it's the beginning. I feel like I'm jumping into like unknown territory in a good way.
Very good.
There's a woman, her name is Beth Barol, Barol. She's on the board of the Northeast Biofeedback Society, and she is bringing neurofeedback into a community. Are you familiar with the Soltane community? It's an international community that has kind of like a very much of a wellness-based, actually anthroposophic type of orientation. Okay, but close to us outside of Philadelphia, there's a particular facility called Camp Hill Soltane. And she is bringing neurofeedback there. And at Camp Hill Soltane, they work with people with developmental disabilities and psychiatric they call them dual diagnosed developmental and psychiatric disabilities. So she might be a nice contact for you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, she's very broad-minded. So nice. Okay, Denise, tell us about yourself.
Okay, I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I have a private practice. Like I said, I'm in Woods Cross, and I employ another therapist, and I also am a practicum field supervisor for the University of Utah. So I do have students that are going to come this fall that are getting their MSW, that are going to train and I guess basically learn how to be a therapist. And part of, I guess, why I got interested in neurofeedback is where my private practice is, there was an individual in this building that was doing it, and I had had conversations with her and it sounded absolutely fascinating. It sounded like the results that she was getting from, you know, her clientele, she was getting, I guess, a lot of longevity with efficacy. And that's what got me interested in it, is I thought, you know, if I could introduce this into my practice for my clients and offer them something that really helps them either reduce their medication, maybe get off their medication, basically live life better, have improved relationships, and be able to do that longer with these treatments, I think that is hugely beneficial to anybody coming in. And I have done, I guess you would call it, traditional talk therapy now for a long, I've been in this field for a very long time, but when I was introduced to neurofeedback, I thought, you know, this is something that I think would be very, very valuable. There's not, there are other neurofeedback providers in this area, but after talking to a few of them, definitely I did not do a comprehensive conversation with all of them, but I talked to a few of them. The other thing is that most of them are board certified at the bachelor level, and they cannot take insurance for their clientele. So everything is out of pocket. And that is, especially where we're at right now, economically, I think maybe, you know, the entire country, is that if I could come in and actually offer this service also, where I could bill insurance, because I do that now. That's what I'm set up to do. I think that also is hugely beneficial for my clients. So I guess that's what I'm looking at is treatment that can offer them longevity of efficacy, and then also to be able to actually take their insurance and help them economically.
Denise, I mean, what you're saying
Amazing.
makes a lot of sense. That was one of the things we did. We have always been insurance-based because we wanted to make this available to as many as possible. And, you know, in it, insurance is a hassle, but you know, Angelica in particular has dealt with them over the years. But the other thing I'll say is this: we have found, and this is around the country, the more neurofeedback providers there are in an area, the better, because the word gets out, and then there's more of a demand. And I don't think there's anywhere in the country where there are enough neurofeedback providers for the demand. So the more people that begin to pop up in your area, it's not really competition. It facilitates the field.
I'm just like so impressed with this group. I'm like, oh my God, you guys are going to do amazing things with this. Paula, nice to have you here. Where are you coming in from?
Hi, I'm in Ohio,
Uh-huh.
Southwest Ohio. I'm a licensed independent social worker. That's the licensure in Ohio, not the LCSW. Not that anybody cares. Denise is probably the only one that would know the difference. But I'm clinical director of an outpatient mental health agency. We serve children, adolescents, and adults. We do have psychiatry services. And kind of speaking to what Denise was talking about, sometimes, I mean, psychiatry is great and has its place, but sometimes medication isn't the answer. So, so looking at, you know, other services we can provide was kind of what has led me to neurofeedback. I've had personal experience with it. Probably about 12-ish years ago, my sons went through neurofeedback for ADHD. And that's when I first became aware of it. And then recently I took a training, like a one-day training. It was kind of like an overview of neurofeedback. And that just got me more excited about wanting to learn more. So then I did some more research, you know, how can I become a practitioner? And that's kind of what led me here. So again, it's something that I'm hoping to offer to clients, another type of service that can help them with their mental health. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
No, that's
Lovely. Yeah.
That's very good. And that, in a way, is what led me here over 20 years ago. I was seeing people for psychotherapy, and I really love psychotherapy, and it's very powerful. But there were those that were only reaching a certain level of benefit, and for whatever reason, for them, medication wasn't an answer. And so it was like, well, what else is there? And then I began to look around, and I became aware of this, and yeah, this works on the electrical side, whereas, you know, obviously the medication works on the chemical side, but it's a good tool. It's a thing that I am sure will add a lot to your practice and to your clients. It's a good thing. So, you know, welcome.
You're going to be
Thank you.
teaching neurofeedback before long to the other clinicians. What was the one-day course that you took? That's a good thing to know about.
It was through Heisel and Associates. Trying to, actually, I have the PowerPoint. It was somebody who went through your agency to get certified.
Oh, that
I'm
was
trying to remember
Stephanie.
her name. Stephanie.
Stephanie Ryal.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So I took that, I don't know, earlier this year.
Yeah,
It was just a one day kind of an overview.
Yeah.
And then I signed up. I was so excited. I signed up for this course, but I also signed up for a neurobiology class, the neuroanatomy, the other one that you have to take
Mhm.
at the same time. And then I discovered I could do
course.
both at the same time. So I feel like I'm actually getting started later with this one because I chose to finish the other one first, and I just finished last week. So,
Good.
but anyway,
Which neuroanatomy course did you take?
Schaefer?
understanding the brain, how it was through University of Chicago.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it was on the BCIA
Yep.
website.
Yeah.
It was one of their pre-approved ones.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good to know. It's a good thing to share because others are going to probably take.
Yeah. It was more of like a neurobiology class. I mean, you understand it's more than just neuroanatomy, but it was helpful, I think. So yeah.
Good. Good. Okay. All right.
Very good.
So this is a great collection of people. And I actually have to say, I mean, I'm not kidding. It's so nice that it's a small group, but also this is a very impressive group so far. So, you know, and we may get somebody who doesn't know anything about neurofeedback, hasn't had any experience, and that's good too, because they're going to learn from you as we go along. They'll learn from your questions and the challenges that you have. So let's fire away. Do you guys have any questions? Any thoughts? Any confusions?
Yeah, and it can be about the two first modules or sessions, or about anything else about the field or getting into the field, anything at all. So fire away.
I'll start with a pretty general
Doesn't surprise me.
So neurofeedback and dementia and Alzheimer's. What kind of work have you had experience in with that? And what kind of research have you heard about in relation to that? Interested to know.
Well, I think first of all, for us, the evaluations, looking at QEEG and ERPs have helped us confirm for some folks just what was occurring. You know, again, this isn't every approach, whether it's fMRI or MRI or each is its own way of looking at this very, very complex organism, and it's a different window, but there are biomarkers in the EEG that can help us to kind of zero in on, is it a frontal temporal thing? Is it a superior temporal issue at first? Where are these things? And then, our experience here is you ordinarily don't reverse it. You can get some gains, but typically the goal is to have an effect upon the progression of it. There's been some research in this, not a lot. So I can't say that there's anything that really jumps out from the research, but again, based upon what we have done and some of our colleagues, we have found that you can perhaps get a little memory functioning, back, but I think the general feeling is that it really staves off, or it can stave off the progression.
One of the things that we'll be talking about a lot is something called peak alpha frequency. And so you haven't gotten there yet, probably in the course, but I'll give you a preview. It's a measurement of kind of what is the brain's idling rhythm, kind of where does the brain hang out when it's at rest. And it should hang out at a frequency, an alpha frequency of about 10 hertz. Okay. Now, and I said about, because you can function well lower, you can function well higher. You have to look at everything together, right? So people will often ask, well, what should it be? And it's like, well, it depends what everything else is also, right? I mean, that's kind of like saying, how long should your arms be? Depends how tall you are. Okay, depends on a lot of other things. So there is not one single measurement for that. But as the brain develops, the baby is born with virtually no alpha rhythms. Okay, they're born with a lot of, when you get into Leon Morales's lecture, he'll talk about this in a very nice way, but the baby's brain primarily produces delta waves, sleep waves. Okay, so babies sleep a lot, but then by the time we're about 12 years old, we have developed our peak alpha frequency. Like, where is our brain going to idle? Where does it hang out? And then as you age, your peak alpha frequency drops. So not from 12 on, but as you age in your 60s and 70s and 80s. So somebody with dementia is going to have a slow alpha frequency. Okay. And that's why they don't respond quickly. That's why they just kind of like, they appear lazy. It's because their brain is idling at a slower rate. Okay.
So Kirsten, is there anything else we can say about that?
No, that's good info for me to start.
Yeah, things will add to it as you go along as well.
Yeah.
And let me say, there's, people say Alzheimer's. There are various forms of dementia, and certainly there are vascular dementias. And the EEG is actually good at detecting that, because what Angelica was alluding to, there's a couple of main arteries in the brain and that are around the superior temporal area. And if the alpha rhythms in those begin to get down to 8 hertz and lower, that's a potential sign of a potential vascular issue. And so these are things, if this is a thing you're going to focus on, you will learn about all of this, but I'm just saying it here to let you kind of get a feeling for the diversity that this can be applicable to.
So what else are you guys thinking about as you're going through the course? I guess I didn't look up, how far along everybody is. I can actually I can look that up on the platform, but we're through the first two videos. You may be further along, you may be behind, but any surprises in that information? Any things that aren't clear?
I have something, and I do want to say that I always appreciate when someone is willing to go first because it's so hard to break that barrier. So I totally appreciate that she asked that question. I am so new to this, so I'm going to just put that out there. So the question that I'm going to ask, if it is a weird question or something, I apologize, but I is what I'm doing as I'm taking the course, and I'm about 56% of the way through. I don't know if everybody's in that, like you said, I don't know if everybody's in that same space or not, but that's about where I am. And so one of the things that I've started to do is to talk to my clientele about me bringing this into practice, and I'm starting to explain it to them at a very primary level, obviously. But as I talk to them about this, I have had a couple of questions from my clients, and I do not know the answer to this question that I'm going to ask. And again, I apologize if this question is way off, but I'm just going to go ahead and be a little bit brave today and go ahead and ask this question. So, with it, where I'm at with my practice, one of the things that I do is I also I wouldn't necessarily call it partner, but that's the easiest word to use. So I'm kind of partnered with other therapists that are in the surrounding area, and we treat, like, I might treat the parents and they might treat the child, and then we have releases so that we can communicate and we can coordinate treatment, and we can all kind of work as a team. Because when you have your own private practice, kind of what like Angelica was saying is that you can, like with neurofeedback, you can often feel alone. You can feel a little bit isolated and you're not sure who to talk to. Private practice for me is a little bit like that. And I need to have resources myself that I can also reach out and I can communicate with other therapists that are treating parts of the same family members that I'm treating. So one of the things that has come up talking to other therapists and then the clients is, we have a case where a child who is 10 years old has been diagnosed with ADHD. But the thing that we're all kind of experiencing being around this family and this child is that we also believe that this child is on the spectrum. We do see some traits of some autism and things, and we have requested that also get looked into. And so the mom of this child has asked me about, like, if my child has ADHD, and neurofeedback is definitely recommended for individuals with ADHD. We see a really good, usually result with that. If my child is also dually diagnosed and has, which they may not use that term anymore, I apologize. That's probably a term from the 90s, but I don't know the new term. I can't remember what it is, but she said, if it comes back that my child is also on the spectrum, can they do neurofeedback? Is there a contraindication? Can you still treat this child if it's just not ADHD? If there are other things that you see that we find out are going on, with this child in their brain, is it okay to do that kind of treatment with them? And I don't know. So I'm just going to throw that out there, and I apologize again if the question is like way off base, but that's the kind of stuff that I get asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, as you know, anything anybody wants to ask is very, very relevant, and we appreciate it. And I think I like what you did is you told the person you don't know, but you will find out. I think that is a very good answer, and that's why we want to build this kind of a community, and because no one's going to know all the answers. Clients are bright and they're curious, and they will ask things that you aren't going to know the answer to. And I think the right answer is, I don't know, but, you know, I'll find out. That's a beautiful answer. And so I will give my answer, and then I'm sure and Angelica will have another answer. The answer is no, you can certainly do neurofeedback. And in fact, there is an area of this field that has dealt a lot with autism. I mean, for years and years and years. And this approach has been seen to really benefit people on the spectrum. We are not as a field so much into diagnosis. We use it because we need to, for insurance purposes, but
And schools.
and then for schools, yes. But for our purposes, we're about function, and I'll speak to, you know, ADHD. You say the person has been diagnosed with ADHD. Well, if a person, a kid or an adult walks in here and says that, we note it, but for us, there are 5 known brainwave patterns that can manifest themselves as the ADHD symptoms. And if a person does not have one of, you know, those 5, we would not call them, you know, ADHD. Other things can have an adverse effect upon attention, as you're all aware. I mean, anxiety, depression. So with this particular child, you know, this sounds like it's a rather complex case, perhaps, and this is a case that we would like to get QEEG ERP data on and kind of look at, well, is there an ADHD piece, or is this more kind of right hemisphere social kind of perception? You know, I mean, we would be trying to look at, okay, what are the functional things with this child that are not optimized. And I left a while earlier, and I heard, as I returned, I heard Ange talk about peak performance. Really, for us, this is about peak performance for everybody. I mean, yeah, for the athlete, it's kind of obvious, or the executive, but for the child with autism, we're also attempting to optimize their functioning. This is what neurofeedback's about. So there are no contraindications, but as a new neurofeedback provider, you're advised not to jump into complex cases from the outset, because you want to be able to choose which things you will address first. You can't address everything at the same time. And so this case sounds like it might be a little complex. So you will either want to find a mentor who can guide you, or something like that. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I think you're going to be faced with the challenge of learning to abandon your ICD-10, your DSM-5, when you're dealing with neurofeedback. If somebody says to me, I have ADHD, I'm kind of like, give me some information that's useful, please. Because as Mitch said, there's various forms. And even if, I mean, when I do most of the work in the office with the kids, and I like to play around with kids, and I'll be like, I don't know what that is. What does it mean? Well, and they're like, well, I don't pay attention. I'm like, what does that mean? You're paying attention to me right now. You're talking to me. So I really dig in deep with them. But, you know, so why don't you pay attention? Do you get drifty? Did you start like daydreaming, or do you get worried and things like, you know? So we're looking at all kinds of things, and without a quantitative EEG, you can start to make guesses, and you can make some pretty good guesses. Now, the training for autism is going to be different from what you might likely do for an attentional problem. And we'll try to throw out a lot of stuff, because there's a lot of information out there, and people new in the field don't know where to go, right? You start doing Google searches and you come across this name or that name, and you're like, is it any good? Rob Coben is in Arkansas, and he's done a lot of work with autism. And he has a special type of protocol that he does with it. I'll tell you, we don't use it. I haven't found it to be as helpful as he has. And that's part of what happens with practitioners anyway, right? There's lots of people who find behavioral interventions very helpful. I don't find them helpful. I know how to do them, but that doesn't work with the clientele that I have. Okay, so you're going to be part of what we want to do is guide you to a lot of tools so that you can ultimately help develop what tools are best for you. But the question becomes, what do you work with first? You know, you can't kind of deal with everything at the same time. It's kind of like if somebody comes into the emergency room and I have a broken leg, I'm bleeding from my arm, and I have a concussion. What do I deal with first? Okay, you got to start one thing at a time. And the same thing is true with neurofeedback. We can't address all the symptoms simultaneously. And that's where your clinical work really comes into play. You know, what I tend to work with things developmentally, you know, so kind of what was apparent first in the developmental progression. Where did the parents first realize? Did they first realize there was an attentional problem? Did they realize there was, you know, the social disconnect maybe related to the ASD? So that's a complicated case. And so when you're starting with practicing, don't start with that one. Don't start with epilepsy. You know, start with like people that you know that are pretty well functioning, that maybe have a sleep problem or maybe have headaches, or, you know, yeah, I have anxiety, but I get by in life fine. Those kinds of things.
Yeah, and if I can add this to add perhaps a overly simplified thing, but I don't really think so. I think the brain at its basis should activate, deactivate, activate, deactivate. Depending upon what task it is before it, should, you know, activate to the right level of arousal to optimize whatever we're about to do. And when, you know, that's over, it should either activate some more if the environment calls upon it, or it should deactivate. One of the main things, if not the main thing, neurofeedback is good at is helping a brain become better at activating, deactivating in an optimal way. And this cannot be overemphasized. I think this is huge. And very often for me, that's the first thing. And when you guys get into assessments and we talk about the arousal assessment, this is really what we're looking at. And as you help a person's brain get better at that self-regulation, all kinds of things may improve. They may attend better. They may sleep better. They may socialize. You know, when the brain is able to do that in an optimal way. So I think as you go through our course, you'll see that that's kind of the direction things headed. And then once that's occurring, you can see, okay, what's left? Are there further attention issues? Are there further sensory integration issues? Are there, are there this, that, the other thing? But that first thing is about helping the brain be able to achieve the optimal arousal level.
So thanks for being brave. That was not a dumb question at all.
No,
That-
no,
That's an important question.
that's a big question. You had said there was another one.
I did say that, and I want to let you know too, I appreciate all that feedback. I think that looking at this and also like I'm definitely recognizing that case would be very complex. That particular child is very complex, and I don't think that I'm anywhere near doing anything like that. So good feedback, and I appreciate that. It's reassuring. The only other question I have, which I'll talk to probably one of you individually. I'm Even though I'm about halfway through the course, honestly, my other question is more focused on I really have no idea at this point, like what equipment would be best for my practice. I don't have a clue. I'm still really up in the air for that, but I will just go ahead and save that for when we talk individually, and we can discuss more intricacies of what I do and what that's going to look like bringing it into my practice. And then I'll have you guys, if you would also give me feedback on what you think through your experience would be the best for me to start with, and what that would look like.
Yes, and I'm, glad that you mentioned that, because I think that's a thing most people think about, and it's confusing, but again, your approach is a good one, and I think that's one of the things that gets talked about a lot in that first free mentoring session. And yeah, depending if you think you're just going to do neurofeedback, you might want to do this. If you're a person that also has an interest in biofeedback and neurofeedback, you might consider these options. If you see yourself getting into QEEG, ERP, then there's this. So yes, I think your approach, what you're saying, makes a lot of sense.
And I would even say, we just sent in the list of course attendees to Be Medic. So they haven't even contacted you yet, right? I don't think they would have been able to do that. So they'll be contacting you and offering to send you equipment prior to our first practicum. So I would say wait until you've had a chance to use some equipment. And that'll make it clearer to you also. But yeah, definitely we want to help you along with that. Other things you guys are puzzling over or thinking about?
I have another one. So ideally, in the perfect world, we would want to get a baseline reading of a client, I guess, and then they would come in with the issue, and we would see what was going on, and then we would try to get back to a healthy point in time. But then we have the normative database that's mentioned a lot, and I'm just wondering where that data comes from, and how we decide where to work back to, if that makes sense. In terms of like age, obviously age is going to be relevant, and like what we're actually trying to help the client or patient with will be relevant. And everyone's going to be individual, but can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Can I answer first? And I am gonna need you to leave, but this is a very important thing, and we could talk about this for a long time. But I'll say this. Normative database is just that. People have spent a huge amount of money testing people out the wazoo to see that they are, they're without particular psychiatric issues or medical issues that can affect brain functioning, blah, blah, blah. And there's, and there are various ones out there. There's only 2 out there that do the comparisons by both age and gender. And it's only recently that people are beginning to realize that there are differences between the male and then the female. So there are normative databases, and then there are clinical. And if you begin to do your comparisons, you want to make sure you know which one you're dealing with. Now, but let me say this. The data is obviously important because it can give us direction, it can give us information. You say, where do we go back to? It's not so much where you go back to, it's where you want to go forward to. A person may never have, had this functioning, I don't know. But as I said, the data gives you direction, but once you begin to train, the data becomes something you kind of keep an eye on, but the bottom line becomes your patient's functioning, and it becomes a kind of a dance because you'll do a protocol based upon your intake and the data, but now you need to see the way that brain, that a person reacts, and based upon that, you'll adjust, and then you'll see how that works, and you then go along adjusting, looking for benefit, and you can see cases where there's very often a nice correlation between the data and the effect. You also see cases where you'll get a huge positive effect and the data changes very little, and vice versa. You can see huge changes in what you think should go to behavioral functional change, and the person says nothing's happening because we're looking at a few variables here, and the brain's very complicated. And so the bottom line is not the data. The data points us, the bottom line is the patient functioning. And good to see you guys. I'm really, really happy you're all with us, and I'll see you again sometime.
Thank you.
You will find, we try not to be biased. And I think one of the ways I try to do that is to let you know when I feel like I am biased. And we are biased with the databases. We're quite biased in terms of now that there is gender differentiation. We just did a course a week or 2 ago where we were teaching how to do QEEG, and everybody had the same data and did the analysis. And it just so happened that we had an old version of the database and the students had a new version. They had the gender differentiated version. And it was like, why is my data look different than all the students? And finally, we realized we were using the old database where all the men and women were just clumped together. There doesn't seem to be racial differences. Okay, that's been tested, doesn't seem to be a factor. Ethnic differences doesn't seem to be a factor. So the primary databases that we use or we refer to, there's a Korean database. It's put out by a company called iSync, I-SYNC. They are probably the most, they're the, I'm going to say they're very, very good at marketing, which is not anything negative, but you'll see them more because they're good at marketing. Also, Jay Gunkelman is a person who is very well known in QEEG. If you ever have a chance to like take a course with Jay, hop on board. Okay, he's the guy who knows more about QEEG probably than anybody in the world. He's a former QEEG tech, and I have had him on. We live in Philadelphia, more hospitals per capita than any other place in the country. Okay, and I've had him on the phone with the top neurologists of the top hospitals here, and they're like, how do you know this? And he's like, well, I just can read an EEG. And they're like, where do you practice? And he's like, oh, I'm a tech. But the guy knows his stuff. So Jay is affiliated with iSync. Okay, we are not financially partnered with HBI Med, but we work very closely with them. We teach with them. We use their product. And that is a database out of Switzerland and Russia. So you'll hear the name Yuri Kropotov, who is a Russian scientist who is very, very well known in the scientific field. He actually won the Russian equivalent of the Nobel Prize. It's the Russian State Prize because Russia doesn't recognize anything else in the world. And so, see you. So that is, we'll be talking about the HBI Med database, but there are other databases. I do want to caution you, Mitch mentioned clinical databases. They're also referred to as referenced database, okay? And that's referenced to a clinical population. So it's like I take all my clients, I take their EEGs, and I summarize it. Personally, that's not who I want to be compared to. But again, I don't really want to be compared to anybody, right? So you can't look at this and say, you have 2 standard deviations, let's fix that, okay? Or again, athletes are easy to think of. If you have an athlete that has very fast processing, that's a good thing, as long as they're right, okay? So I get plenty of athletes that are fast and make errors of commission. They hit the wrong button. That's not good. No good to be a hockey player and your shot on goal is wrong. Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of discussion we can have about databases. So good questions, good questions. Some of you didn't have a chance to ask questions. If you do have them and you want to shoot me an email, go ahead. These sessions are recorded. They get put up about a week later. So if you ever miss one, you'll be able to go back and look over it. And hope you're all good. Hope that was helpful. It's great to meet you guys. So nice to, I type these names, I repeat them over and over, and it's like now to see who goes with them is so much better. So have a good couple of weeks. We'll see you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.